Nightmare on Euclid Avenue, a Halloween tale for 2015. The story I am about to relate to you is real. The details have been hidden away for many, many years, but due to an accidental finding of a handwritten confession and many hours of exhaustive research of the facts, the gruesome and revolting facts, can now be told. Although it is now too late to bring to justice the black-hearted criminals responsible for the nightmare on Euclid Avenue. The year was 1940. Carl Malhorter and his wife, Margaret, were a hard-working and industrious couple. Carl was a state-registered surveyor, much in demand, and his wife, Margaret, was very active in church and civic activities. She was also a highly sought-after singer of sacred songs of the Christian faith. They were both well known and respected in their hometown of Zanesville, Ohio. The Malhorters had no natural children of their own, but they adopted several children from the Muskingum County Children's Home. At one time, they had 12 children living under their very small roof. Mr. Malhorter was known as a soft-spoken man of mild-mannered and calm demeanor, but Mrs. Malhorter had a stern countenance and was all business, especially when it came to running the house and raising the children. The children were expected to be polite, well-mannered, and above all, useful in the running of the small but well-populated home. It can be imagined that raising 12 children and keeping a house for a husband was a formidable task that required much effort and cooperation from everyone involved. Carl was very successful in his surveying business, and he has gone most of the time on projects, but he was able to provide very well for his large family. The children always were well-dressed and well-fed. Mr. Malhorter had even hired a construction company to build for the children a large swimming pool behind his home on Euclid Avenue. On the night before the concrete pool was to be poured, however, a very unfortunate event occurred that would change the Malhorter family forever. Children are sometimes ungrateful to their parents for their life and support, and sometimes the children would complain to their friends that life at the Malhorter home required too much hard work on chores and studies. One day, July 4th, 1940 to be exact, Mrs. Malhorter had called the police to report that one of her children had run away. Rebecca, the runaway child, had left a neatly written note on her bedside that explained that she wanted to have less work and study and had left for a better life to parts unknown. Although the children and the neighbors were questioned, the alerts were sent out all over the state. No trace of the 15-year-old Rebecca was ever found. The family tried to carry on, but the loss of Rebecca was a heavy burden on the family's spirits, especially young Belle Malhorter, who had been very close to her older sister, Rebecca. Margaret Malhorter seemed to keep all of that much busier with her homemaking duties, if to avoid thinking about her loss. Some of the children related to their friends that sometimes Margaret couldn't sleep and was found walking the halls and rooms of the home in Euclid Avenue during the middle of the night, wringing her hands and moaning softly. The children were frightened by her late night behavior and apparently distracted mind during the day. Her husband Carl's demeanor had changed too. He seldom smiled and spoke very little. A strange problem had begun to persist with the Malhorter home shortly after the leaving of Rebecca. The house had begun to have a problem with mold and mildew, first in the basement, and then on the outside of the home, and gradually inside living spaces. First a gray mold was found creeping along the baseboards, and then a black mold inched its way along the bottom of the walls, especially in the Moore hoarder's bedroom. The pool had been completed, and the children enjoyed it very much. Carl and Margaret had told the neighbors that they had begun to suspect that somehow the pool was the cause of the mildew and mold problems. Mr. Moorhalter actually began to give swimming lessons as well. They had called in professionals to dealing with the mold and mildew, but they could find no direct cause. Ventilation throughout the home was improved. Drainage around the home was improved too, to no avail. Finally, after 5 years, the pool was filled in with dirt, but the mildew continued. The Moorhalters were desperate. At the suggestion of a wild and worldly friend of Carl's, Scottish priest of the Anglican Church named Lanar Leah was called to bless the home and see if that would help. It did. The mold and mildew gradually subsided, and it all seemed well for a time. On October 31st, 1969, Carl passed away, leaving Margaret alone in the old home. A week later, friends visiting the widow noticed long fibers of gray mildew crawling up the living room walls. When friends offered to help her to remove the unsightly growth, Margaret said, "No, leave it. It's back to stay, and it will have me." Thinking that she was unsettled by her husband's death, her visitors chose to overlook her strange words. On March 12th, 1972, Margaret's family had all come to visit her on her 90th birthday. It was a surprise, too, and for Margaret there was cake and ice cream and balloons and singing of the birthday song. Although not seeming to be very happy about the whole thing, Margaret joined in the festivities. After the happy birthday song was sung, Margaret blew out the candles, and the small cabinet door above the broom closet exploded open with amazing force. Margaret looked at it and screamed with amaze as she shrieked, "Somebody, nail that door shut! Nail it shut! For the mercy of God, nail it shut!" One of the men at the gathering found some nails and a hammer in a drawer and nailed the door shut, and it remained so for 40 years. In December 1974, Margaret went to meet her maker as well. Her daughter Ellen began to live in the home. The mildew all seemed well in the home, but Ellen did notice that from time to time that the small cabinet door made a cracking and scraping sound, as if something was trying to get out or get in. The small storage space behind the small cabinet door had been so securely sealed. In the spring of 1994, a fine young man of the cloth, Matthew Scott Blau, and his wife Gay, also of the cloth, purchased the Euclid home, dwelling as a future retirement home. Much painting and rewiring and replumbing was needed, and was done to bring their new home to the point of pride. While painting alone one night, Matt was distracted by a crackling sound coming from the small cabinet door. He investigated and found it sealed. Being curious, with some thought that there might be something hidden valuable sealed there within, he took some tools and pried away the spikes and the layers of paint and opened the long, sealed door. At first, the chamber seemed empty, but he noticed that the floor of the space had a board that was loose. Lifting it, he found an old, faded envelope. Matt took the envelope into the kitchen. There was a good strong light, and opened the long, sealed envelope. What he found shocked his gentle sensibilities. There was a letter that read thusly: "To whoever finds this letter and somehow I know it will be found. I pray that you will not judge me too harshly for what I disclose herein. I pray that you will find it in your heart to accept my sincere regret for my deeds, and that you will pray for my soul. I have only one hope for my soul, and nothing more. In short, I am responsible for the death, no, murder, of my beautiful daughter Rebecca. She died at my hand. I would like to say that it was an accident, that I did not mean to harm her, but I have no excuse. I will burn in hell forever if your prayers are not sufficient to save me. If you pray for me at all, I had a day that was very taxing, from before dawn until late at night. No one knows how much work is required to keep a home of 14 people. I was completely exhausted, and my daughter Belle was very ill. I was overwhelmed, and Carl, my husband, was out of town for 2 more days. All of the children save Rebecca had gone to bed. Rebecca was helping to finish washing the dinner dishes. I told her to go down into the basement and bring up the laundry. She began to cry, saying, "No, Mother, I'm too tired. I will not do any more." Without thinking, I lashed out my right hand and struck her across the face. But I did not realize that I was holding a very large, very sharp butcher knife in my hand that I had been cleaning. The knife cut the side of her neck. She died in my arms. I knew that my husband would never forgive me. I knew that the law would never forgive me. I had a family to care for and a husband to provide a home for. I forged a note supposedly left by Rebecca. I called the police and reported her missing. You may wonder where Rebecca is now. I placed her in the bottom of the pit that the workmen had dug for the new swimming pool that my husband had contracted for. I dug a shallow grave in the sandy bottom of the pit and smoothed it over. The next day, the workers covered her grave with 30 inches of concrete. I thought that all would be well with my life and my secret never known to anyone. But the mildew began. I knew it was a sign from God or the devil or maybe even from Rebecca, calling attention to my crime and crying out for justice. I couldn't tell anyone that I knew, not even my husband Carl. I have lived with the creeping, condemning mildew for 33 years. Matthew shared the finding of the letter with me and asked that what I thought he should do. I said that the letter could be a fake, just a prank. If he reported it to the police, they would probably dig up the pool, which was now under part of the home. Margaret's daughter had contracted for an addition to be built over the side of the old pool. Much of this home would be destroyed. Its market value would be greatly reduced. His family would be freaked out and refuse to live in it. And it was way too late to bring the evildoer to justice anyway. I recommended that he keep the letter to himself. He told me that he put the letter back under the loose board for a future homeowner to find. I think that might have been the right decision. But he tells me that darn door still opens by itself. And he has seen dark shapes wandering around the home late at night. Sometimes sleeping there. His daughter and son-in-law can feel fingers on their shoulders and backs. And sometimes the floor creaks as if someone is walking back and forth late at night in deep despair. Rocking chairs seem to rock by themselves, and faint traces of mildew can still be found creeping along the basement walls.